Hi guys, today we're going to look at defending against overbets on high disconnected boards, two Broadway boards, not this board. And we're going to start with a couple pointers towards what's going on. So Villain is betting with a very polarized range. He's going to have a very narrow bluffing range and a very narrow value range. And therefore we need to continue very tight, of course. We're going to value drawing to the nuts a lot and dominating his bluffs. So for example, here on this board, having ace jack would be much better than having ace 10 because ace 10 is dominated by ace jack. So let's roll it back a little bit. His bluffing range is very narrow, and so his bluffing range is going to be very often something like ace jack, jack 10, ace 10, those types of hands. And so we don't really like having ace 10 and getting dominated by ace jack. He's going to have ace jack very, very often, and therefore having ace 10 is bad. But here, one thing is that we're drawing to the nuts, which is great. So we are drawing to beat anything he has in range. We do have the flush draw blocker, which is great because for a few reasons. First of all, it gives us extra equity if the board runs four flush. But I think most importantly, we are reducing the equity of his flush draws by having one of his outs in hand, and it's just gonna make the board run three flush less often. So our hand is gonna be stronger more often when we hit the straight. I think with the backdoor flush draw we're dope, and the not got shot we're gonna continue always. Maybe we raise sometimes, but now with this roll, yeah, so pretty much continuing always. I assume without the spade we would be folding a lot actually, because what we talked about getting dominated by ace jack. So ace 10 folding a lot without the spade, pretty much never folding with the spade, and ace jack just never folding ever, because when we have ace jack, the opposite thing is true, where he's gonna have an ace 10 a lot of the time, and would completely dominate him with ace jack. Yeah, important thing to note: jack 10. Well, jack 10 is an open in there, so it's different. But it's also not getting dominated so much by ace jack. Well, that's not true. Yeah, it's an open ender, so it's calling more often. And it's also throwing to the nuts on both ends, which is great. Fold. I don't know if I explained this before, but when calling, hitting the right frequency for each combo that is indifferent is almost impossible, really. So just figuring out which combos are pure calls, which combos are pure folds like this one, and which combos are indifferent is going to be a huge win. And once you detect that you have an indifferent combo, you can mix in some folds and some calls. Here I think this is mostly going to be a fold. It's just kind of a weak hand. We don't have a backdoor flush draw. With a backdoor flush draw we would be much happier to continue. I'm not sure if it's going to be a pure fold. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say it's a pure fold, but I'm not sure. Yeah, it's a pure fold. Ace 9, never folding. It's going to raise a small amount of the time. 20% of the time. Important to note is that, it's a fairly important thing to note, is that ace king, well, we don't have ace king, but king 9 is going to raise probably more often than ace 9. Yeah, king 9 raises more often than ace 9. Reason being, king 9 unblocks more calls. So when he has ace queen, he's going to bet call. For the sizing, we like having king 9 so we can get called by that hand. Just a big fold. This, I don't think we ever fold a top pair with backdoor flush draw. I think that's a pretty common rule. Plus we have a decent backdoor straight draw. So never folding. This I think we can fold at some frequency. On a 56, I kind of want to call, but it's really close. It's really close. I wouldn't be surprised if this folded a lot. It's not folding a lot. It's just folding 3% of the time. But yeah, it's getting to that indifferent point. Let's see where that indifferent point starts on that board. So King 7 is slightly indifferent, or rather it's like almost indifferent, so the solver is not quite knowing what to do. This is more like clearly indifferent. King 9, which is fairly interesting. So why would you think King 9 is worse than King 7? We do have a backdoor straight draw, which on its face would look like a good feature. Same way that King 10 has a backdoor straight draw, and it's pure calling. So maybe it has something to do with villain's bluffs. Maybe his overbending range contains a lot of 9s that bluff, which is actually the case. He is bluffing with Jack 9, 10-9 off, which is a shit ton of bluffs, 10-9 suited, Jack 9 suited. So the 9 is really bad here. We have King 9. And the 7 is a little bit better. Now that's not super important to nail down. Those hands are still pretty much indifferent. But yeah, interesting point to make. Pure folding here. So this is one of those spots where our hand is dominated a lot by, so King Jack dominates us, King Queen dominates us, and his range is going to contain a lot of King Queen and King Jack for this sizing. So here we would much prefer to have 5-3 than Queen Jack, even though both hands are drawing to very good straights. 5-3 is not dominated by a lot of villains range, while Queen Jack is. So I think I'm going to pure fold this one. Not quite a pure fold, so only 72% of the time folding, but mostly folding definitely. Yeah, so mostly folding. And as we see, 5-3, 5 deuce are much happier to continue for the reasons I outlined just before. Don't care about this board. Let's just look at 2 Broadway disconnected boards. So same idea as before. Queen 10 getting dominated by King Queen, King 10. Not really happy. I would much prefer having 5-3 than this. I'm just gonna fold. On a 2-tone board without a backdoor flush draw, this is kind of like really bad, because even if we pick up the straight, a lot of the time it's gonna come 3 flush. So just pure folding that. So interestingly enough, here it was a pure fold, not in the previous board. And I'm guessing it's because this board is 2-tone, so the likelihood that our straight comes with a flush is much higher. And again, you know, having 5-3 kind of better, but still without the backdoor straight flush draw, we're not really too thrilled to continue with a gut shot. We pretty much need a backdoor flush draw to continue. I'm surprised though that King Queen doesn't continue more, because I would figure it is dominating a lot of villains' bluffs, so I would figure it would defend a little bit more than this. But yeah. Ace 5, we're gonna be folding a lot here. It's just a hand that, you know, we have the backdoor straight draw, which is not irrelevant, right? It's not the worst, but we have just not that great of a hand. We don't have that much backdoor equity. So I think this is at least going to be folding at some frequency. This is at least indifferent. On a 14, I'm going to fold. Right, so this is actually very interesting to me because I know that on a different board, on a different board, it would pure fold. So I knew that on a different board, it would pure fold. And I was thinking, okay, if on a different board, it pure folds, here having a backdoor straight draw, maybe we call like 50-50. But no, actually backdoor straight draw is switching things a lot. It's making us call a lot more often than on a board where we don't have a backdoor straight draw. So keep in mind that if this was ace jack 6, then ace 5 would almost certainly pure fold. Given it's ace jack 4, we can pretty much pure call it, although having a 5 of diamonds is bad because we're blocking a lot of bluffs. But yeah, interesting to point out that backdoor straight draw, backdoor equity is really important here, especially when we have backdoor equity to the low straight, which is going to be more often uncontested. So the high straight, a 4 straight, like ace to the jack 4 straight, is going to be much more contested, where both players are going to have the 10 very often. But on ace, deuce, 3, 4, not as often both players are going to have the 5. Here we do have a backdoor straight draw. What do we? No, we don't. We don't actually have a backdoor straight draw. We have a backdoor flush draw and a second pair. The board is very dry, which is good for these types of hands, because on a dry, disconnected rainbow board, it is easier to get to the river without your hand turning into shit. So the runner is going to come pretty clean fairly often, and so these types of hands gain a lot of value. So I'm thinking maybe these pure calls. I'm just going to pure call it. I'm thinking it could pure call. Yeah, it pure calls. On a two-tone board, it would be different, I believe. It's just pure folding. Just pure folding. Pure folding. We don't really care about the backdoor flush draw plus backdoor straight draw type hands. We don't really care when we face this sizing. It's just too big to care about that small of an equity. Fold. And as you see, most of the hands are just, you know, we have a gotcha here, but it is a gotcha that's not drawing to the nuts. We're dominated by, like, even Jack 10 is fucking us hard, so pure folding that. But yeah, what I was saying is that, what was I saying? I don't even know what I was saying. Yeah, the most hands are either pure folds or pure calls. So, I think we can pure call this. It's the nut open in there. Yeah. Most hands pure call or pure fold. Therefore, your overall frequencies are going to be quite okay as long as you nail those. And then, yeah, for the indifferent hands, you just need to know that they're indifferent. Mix in some calls, some folds. Your overall frequency is going to be pretty good. Ace Jack here. Definitely continuing. I expected it not to raise this often, but that's actually raising 80% of the time. I was trying to make it roll like 60 to raise. Folding. Pure folding. We also need to keep in mind that we can't be raising with shit bluffs, because first of all, we're gonna need to be folding a lot of them, and second of all, so this is interesting. So here we don't have a backdoor straight draw. We just have a top pair with shit kicker, no backdoor flush draw. I think we're gonna close to pure fold this. On the 6, we're gonna fold. Okay, we fold a fair amount of the time. Not quite pure, but yeah. So as I was saying, like some of these combos are almost pure folding. Some of those are more like 50-50. Not really important to nail them, just to know that they're indifferent and mix them at some frequency. And that plus nailing the pure calls and pure folds will make you defend pretty well. This is not a fold ever. On a 2, I'm gonna call. And yeah, because we don't have a lot of value, so on these boards we generally don't have a lot of the top 2 pair. We don't have the top set and the middle set. So our raising range is gonna be fairly narrow. So we need to be very selective with the hands that we raise. A lot of them are gonna contain a pair, so maybe like bottom pair plus a flush draw. It's a pretty good bluff raise because we're blocking sets. We are, we are close to bottom of the continuing range with the bottom pair. So like it doesn't have that much showdown value. So it's not bottom pair with a flush draw is not bottom of the continuing range, but in terms of showdown value, it kind of is. So yeah, we're gonna choose a lot of those stronger draws to raise. So here, for example, this is one of those hands that we will raise at some frequency, I believe. Bluff raise. I roll a 69. Probably we're not raising 30% of the time, but I want to do it either way, just to see what happens. Yeah, so 23% of the time we're raising. 24, sorry. Here we're gonna call on a 15, but we would raise a lot. Like, yeah, 50-something% of the time. Folding here. And I think we're getting the gist of it. So this video doesn't need to be very long. It's just, we just need to calibrate our calls better than most people. Most people will be either pure calling gut shots, or pure folding all gut shots, or pure calling all of the top pair, pure calling bottom pair with backdoor flush draw on a 2-tone board. A lot of people are going to have really, really bad heuristics for these boards, and so yeah. Jack 4 here, no backdoor flush draw, a shit kicker. I kind of want to fold it a lot, so I think it's gonna be indifferent here. I'm leaning towards, I'm leaning between indifferent and a pure folding. I think it's gonna call maybe at a very, very low frequency, maybe like 10% or something, but mostly folding. Yeah, basically that. It's folding 83% of the time, calling 17% of the time. So if you pure fold that one, it's not horrible. Folding that. 6s. This is going to be raising a lot. I'm not sure on a 2070 if I want to raise without a spade. Well, I can't have a spade, never mind. But with a diamond is worse to raise. So I think with the diamond, I'm going to call it a little bit more. So I'm going to call here. And without a diamond, I'm going to raise a little bit more. Yeah, so it's calling 16% of the time, and let's see what the specific suits do. Yeah, so exactly. So with a diamond, it's calling a little bit more, and without a diamond, it's pure raising. Reason being, we're blocking 6x of diamonds, which would bet call potentially. I don't think we can ever fold this. Right? Queen 9, not great, right? We're not drawing to the nuts, so a jack completes ace queen. We don't have a backdoor flush draw. We get dominated by ace queen. Just not great. I'm gonna pure fold it, and it is correct. Pure folding this one. We're gonna go for like 5 minutes more, or maybe even less, and call it a video, because it gets pretty boring after a while with this. It's not like when c-betting, where you can think a lot about a single spot. Here it's just like, I have a shit hand, I fold. I have a good hand, I call. So there's not much. There's not much else to it. It's just about realizing, it's just about getting used to which hands continue and which hands don't. It's more of a instinct training type thing, just getting in reps, training your mind to know where each hand stands. This is going to be very often a raise, especially with a backdoor flush draw, I believe. 20, I think I'm going to raise it. Yeah, it's almost always a raise. As we talked about before, bottom two pair is going to raise more often than top and bottom pair because of the unblockers to the top pair. Folding with this shit got shot. Because a 10 doesn't bring us so we're not drawing to the nuts. We are somewhat dominated by a few hands, but it's just mostly we're not drawing to the nuts, so I think I'm gonna pure fold this. $8-7, goodbye. 5-4, not folding this. This is one of those spots where we push, so just go all in versus the c-bet with a pair plus flush draw. But I think we would need something like 10-5 or 9-5 of spades to push rather than this hand. Maybe this does it at like a 5 or 10% frequency, pushing all in. For the most part, it's just gonna either raise normally or call. I'm gonna raise normally here. And yeah, so as we talked about, there is this pushing all in thing with 9-5 suited, 10-5 suited, but surprisingly to me, it's also doing it with these ones with 5-4 suited, 5-3 suited. So yeah, the important thing to note here is that on this two-tone boards, when you're gonna split just normal raises with all-in pushes, you're not gonna be able to nail which combo does what. I'm pretty sure, like why 5-4 does this and 5-3 does this. I don't think it's very possible to know in game, especially when you have to think fast. But just knowing that it is a thing and that you're gonna have to do it at some frequency, that's gonna be a huge improvement over not knowing that it even is a thing. Interesting that ace-4 also does it with the double backdoor straight draw and the not flush draw. And yeah, it's important to note that top two pair is actually doing it a fair amount, so it's not just marginal value that does it. So combo draws do it sometimes. Top two pair, bottom set not as much, but sometimes. And yeah, threes just fold. Let's see if we get another interesting spot where we need to do some crazy plays, like the jam, the check raise jam. This is never a fold, I believe. I'm just gonna call here. Maybe raising more with ace jack. And this is the same idea with, like, as before, where he has a lot of ace jack when he bets this sizing. So I'm not sure I want to raise a lot with ace 10, get called by ace jack and suffer through that. So I'm gonna mostly call this. Yes, pure calling. Let's see what ace jack of diamonds would do, because that would prove our hypothesis. Yeah, so actually not, well, we don't even have ace jack that much. So we don't really have, we do have ace jack with the backdoor flush draw, a different one. So what are our bluff raises? They're hands like 5-4, 6-4, backdoor straight draw, front door flush draw, Hands like top pair, bad top pair with a flush draw, raising a lot as well. The not flush draws are raising a fair amount. Yeah, so that's just not strong enough to raise. Keep in mind that our raising range here is like 3% of the time. So we need to be really, really selective with our raising hands. Gonna fold here. Don't care about the backdoor shit alone. The hand needs to have a little bit more to it. So okay, I think we're gonna mix this hand. I'm gonna fold this. I'm gonna fold it this time. We don't have a backdoor straight draw. I think we're gonna call out some frequency because we have an overcard to the 4, which is, I guess, decent. So I'm gonna fold it this time. Yeah, it's mostly call, but folding sometimes. And probably these suits are gonna do something very weird. Maybe not. Yeah, not that much really. Just having the ace of hearts is pretty bad because honestly, it has obviously something to do with the backdoor straight flush draws, but not sure. It seems like a small effect, so not really that relevant. But yeah, it's just important to know that the hand is indifferent and that you can actually fold it at some frequency, and that well, if you pure call this one is not a huge mistake. But as you have seen on other boards, all of these hands will fold a lot. So it's important to do consider folding those hands. And yeah, let's do a couple more hands, or the next. Let's get to the next indifferent hand and call it a day here. So is this indifferent? I believe it's not. I would say it's more of a fold than anything, just given the two-tone board. It's just like we're not gonna get clean to the river very often. We don't have extra equity to call on a turn ever. So yeah, that's important. Having equity to call a turn is important, and here we don't really have anything. So pure folding. This is not indifferent, it's just pure continue. Again, not indifferent at all. This one might be indifferent actually. Although, nah, we do have the two backdoor straight draws. So we have the ace 3-4 backdoor straight draw and the ace queen jack backdoor straight draw, plus a pretty good flush draw. So I think we will pure continue it. At 35, we're just gonna call it. Yeah. But it's important to know that some flush draws will be indifferent and will have to fold. It's not like you have a flush draw and you need to continue for sure. 9-5 is indifferent, 9-7 is indifferent, 8-5 is indifferent, 8-6 is indifferent, 6-3 is indifferent. These aren't because they have a gut shot with them, but lots of 10-3 indifferent. So queen. So basically, with the flush draws, you really care about how high the flush is when you hit it, and yeah. So basically, the higher the flush draw, the better. I believe the reason why we prefer something like 9-7 suited rather than 9-5 suited, or we prefer something like 10-8 suited rather than 10 deuce suited, is because 10-8 suited is blocking higher flush draws more, which is fairly important. So with 10-8 suited, we're blocking Jack 8 suited, we're blocking Queen 8 suited, we're blocking King 8 suited, and so on. But with 10 deuce suited, we're not quite blocking as many better flushes, right? So I think that's the main idea, just blocking more higher flushes. But yeah, important to know that in fact, a lot of flush draws are indifferent, and you actually need to fold them. If you pure call them, you're going to be punting a lot. So this with the double straight, backdoor straight draw, it seems like we do have some incentive to call, even without the backdoor flush draw. So I'm gonna say we will call this sometimes. On a 64, I kind of want to call, but it's pretty close. Yeah, it's indifferent, indeed. And yeah, as we said, on the next different hand, we're gonna call it a day. So, yeah, that's all about defending versus overbets on the flop. Just the summary for it would be, don't blindly call top pair or second pair or third pair, because you need to fold a lot of your third pair, a lot of your second pair, and some of your top pair sometimes you need to fold as well. Very important to analyze the strength of our draw. So is it drawing to the nuts? Is it being dominated by other straight draws of a similar morphology? Does it have a little bit more of showdown value? Do we care if, so for example, if there are two, if it was ace jack 4, does our straight get dominated more? So for example, on ace jack 4, 5-3 would get less dominated than queen 10, and therefore 5-3 would be kind of a better call than queen 10. So yeah, being able to analyze your draws like that, and just knowing that you have to fold a lot of the shit that yeah, just basically fold very tight. A lot of people are not folding that tight, so it is very common. It's very commonly said that people overfold to overbet on the flop. I believe that not to be true. I believe that people will call, maybe nits or people who don't study a lot or who don't study ever. They will fold a lot because they will just think, oh, here's nutted, I'm gonna fold. But actually regs that study a little bit but not quite enough, I think they will face the bet and will be like, oh shit, I have top pair, I need to defend. Shit, I have a second pair or bottom pair with backdoor flush draw, I need to defend for sure. And sometimes that's not true, so need to be careful there. But yeah, that's it. I'll see you next time.